Dear amazing men at the forefront of games journalism who reside at the foundries where all kinds of digital goodness is forged. First of all, congratulations on your independence. This caused me to join Patreon to support all of you as your content provides countless hours of fun. That's always nice to hear. Fun. Which games would you personally like to see ported to the Switch to? I personally keep my hopes up for a port from Capcom's Resident Evil series, especially the latest remakes with hopefully 60 FPS and DLSS. Since Resident Evil 4 runs well on my Steam Deck, I'm hopeful this can be achieved. I presume once more Switch 2 dev kits get into the hands of developers, we'll see more ports in the future. Thank you, and best regards, Captain Nooble. Tom, Switch 2 ports. We've kind of it's been quite interesting. I expected an early deluge of ports,
Me too.
but we didn't quite get them. There are reports this week that Nintendo is asking for system-specific features for those ports that make them stand out. But what sort of games would you like to see on there that are sort of within the realms of possibility?
Well, I think we've got to get the basics out there. Call of Duty, the Call of Duty series, if it hasn't already been announced, that would be great to see on there. That would be a good starting point, and I think technically that's very viable. Assassin's Creed Shadows, we mentioned earlier, I think it's ambitious, but it's the best one in my view. It's one of the greatest Assassin's Creed games, and to have that in a handheld format, perfect. The RE Engine games as well. I think Street Fighter 6 is, maybe sets a precedent in some respects, but it's also arguably one of the least sort of demanding. There's no open world stuff. There's no ray tracing, so it's like the RE Engine Resident Evil games. They've got like all of them. Like got so many to go through. And
yes, there is a long and storied history there. Devil May Cry, etc., etc. It just keeps going.
Yeah, for sure. Monster Hunter Wilds. There's a lot of stuff that they can put over. Dragon's Dogma. I think we mentioned in a previous direct. That one's maybe the holy grail where Capcom might have a challenge.
One or two.
Oh, two.
Oh,
yeah.
Two. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Two is going to be significantly challenging. Yeah.
It's a tough one.
Anything else?
I think that's the lot for me. Oh, no. The big one, Elden Ring. I think that really has to make the jump.
Oh, that's happening, of course, isn't it? That's going to be coming very, very soon. We can't wait to take a look at that one. Oliver?
Well, in terms of games that I would actually like to see that I think would scale well, I'd think about some lighter current generation games. Think of games like Battlefield 6. I think that's one of the lighter current generation games we've seen in a while. Surprisingly. I think that would be doable at 30 FPS, probably 40 FPS maybe a wobbly 60 FPS or 60 FPS only in some modes. Like we saw last generation with like Battlefield 1 at launch on PlayStation 4 in like domination or smaller player count modes that would run at 60 FPS, and maybe in Conquest a lower update there. So that could be a possibility. Also, Doom the Dark Ages, I'd love to play that on a handheld. I think that'd be super fun, even if it was 30 FPS. Also, the Call of Duty games, like Tom mentioned, I think those would be pretty fun on Switch. And those should scale well, given that they are current generation games, but they're also last generation games. But in terms of like games that I think would stress the hardware in interesting ways, in ways that might be revealing potentially, like Tom said, there's Dragon's Dogma. There are like some CPU demanding games. Baldur's Gate 3 would certainly come up in that conversation. I think Starfield would come up in that conversation. I'd also really like at some point to see full fat UE5, i.e. Lumen, Nanite, and Virtual Shadow Maps in some games that are visually sophisticated. I'd think of games like Hellblade 2, maybe. I mean, that's a
100%
shot maybe that they wouldn't be able to match, but that would certainly be very compelling. I'm testing Mafia: The Old Country right now, and that game looks absolutely extraordinary. Again, these are kind of like wish list type games. I wonder how they would scale necessarily. Also, like maybe proper UE5 Fortnite, that would be certainly quite interesting with the full feature set there. I'd also like to see some demanding games that maybe aren't on commodity engines as much. So we are seeing like Star Wars Outlaws, for instance, coming out very soon. Alan Wake 2 on Northlight, potentially with like RT in the mix or something. I'd like to see some games that just push out the spectrum of what we think is possible on Switch. Bring that out there. I think we're seeing that very soon on September 4th with Star Wars Outlaws, but I'd love to see other titles in the mix there as well, but push out on the CPU or push out with crazy UE5 features. I'd especially be curious to see how that scales on the portable side of things, and then also scale out using these impressive third-party engines that are pushing out ray tracing and look really superb, that aren't just commodity engines like Unreal or Unity. So yeah, just a few thoughts there.
Yeah, a few thoughts from my perspective. I think there's basically a wealth of cross-gen titles from PS4 to PS5 that would be eminently doable on Switch 2. Control springs to mind immediately. That would just be fantastic, I think, on Switch 2. Potential even for ray tracing on that one, because I think that would be transformative, and I think the hardware could potentially do it. What can I say? Yeah, I echo the call for Call of Duty. Again, it's still cross-gen. I do think that makes it viable. I also think there's two sort of curveballs to think about. First of all, there's a lot of Switch 1 games which I think stand to actually get proper Switch 2 releases. I mean, when I was doing the back compat testing for The Witcher 3, the Switch 1 version running on Switch 2, it's like, okay, so it runs well now, but come on, the hardware can do so much more, than this. All of those sort of limitations that were put in place for the Switch 1, they can be lifted for Switch 2. So there's a lot of games, and it's not just Doom the Dark Ages. The prior id Tech games, I think, would just fly on that hardware. I think it would be fantastic. Potentially even 60 FPS, which I think would be cool. Another sort of curveball, I think, there is a pretty good argument for Sony to embrace the Switch 2. Certainly in the years before their own handheld comes out, assuming it comes out at all. And, you could put out Marvel Spider-Man remastered onto Switch 2, and it would sell like the clappers, right? There's the original God of War. The thing about those games is that they still look awesome. And based on the fact that they looked awesome on a base PlayStation 4, it stands to reason they'll look just as good, potentially even better on a Switch 2. So there's a lot of really, a huge wealth of potential. I guess the only danger is, just talking about old games when you really want to see new ones on the Switch 2, don't you?
Yeah.
Fundamentally. But yeah, I mean, the potential there is huge. And I can understand that Nintendo is basically asking developers to, curate what they actually want to have on the platform, because it could become a deluge.
I think, there's at least there's some funny situations though, like adding Switch 2 features just for the sake of it. Like Street Fighter 6 has a few of those, and they're just party modes where you got to waggle the Joy-Cons. I don't know. It just seems a bit, if they're just bolted on for the sake of it, it seems like a bit of a waste. But I suppose it does no harm. If it's just an extra that you'd have to touch, then that's fine.
I just love the way some of these phrases end their way, find their way into the gaming lexicon.
Waggle,
the concept of waggle, the one which sort of raised politically correct alarm bells for me yesterday. I saw a tweet talking about super deformed artwork.
Oh yeah, Final Fantasy
in the 21st
9.
The 21st century, would you really be using the term super deformed?
No, you're right.
And yet it's now part of the parlance, and it just sort of passes without comment.
Yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought of that. It kind of started with Final Fantasy 9, I think, because people were like looking at hyper realistic Final Fantasy 8 characters, and then Squaresoft went, okay, actually people want more cutesy 16-bit style designs, and that's one of the games that started that phrase, I believe, anyway.
Well, no, super deformed goes way back into like
the
annals of 8-bit
oh my
gaming.
God.
Yeah.